Look at how beautifully green the grass has become. I mean, look at that. Isn't that just beautiful grass? I think so. And the cows seem to think that as well. The dike over there is rather yellow compared to the rest. Well, I think there was a flooding not too long ago, last week I think. And I'm not quite sure if this area was affected, or if this is just the groundwater that is very high. But if it were affected, it really, I mean, it has rained a lot since the kind of drought, not exactly drought, but kind of drought. And I think that the grass has turned into a beautiful green. It really lights up the landscape. I think it's really nice actually. Like, even though, yeah, some people will say, oh, it's cultivated land. How terrible is that? It's not wilderness like that. But let me ask you, which is more aesthetically pleasing? Is it this, or is it that over there? That is some mess if I have ever seen some mess. Whereas that is just great. Like, who wouldn't want to live out of this compared to this, honestly? This looks horrible. And look at how almost blue it is in comparison to the fresh greenness of the grass here. And even though the houses over there are quite boring, I think the grass compensates for that. I think those houses have just been saved by the grass they are out in front of. Well, when we walk up here, we can see that it's just a nice area. Wait, is it starting to rain? Please don't tell me it's starting to rain. It would be so annoying. But look at this. Isn't this nice too? I mean, yeah, some people say, oh no, single family housing. I would like to say, I kind of like this. I would be glad if I would live in one of these houses. With all these quite quiet streets actually. Like, it's not as crowded here as it is in the centre of the town. And you still really have this small towny feel, which I really like. Look at that. Isn't this just infinitely nice? When people say, yeah, we need to revolutionize the city, we need to build cities like Copenhagen, I would like to put in a very strong word for the very, not too small, but kind of small towns like this one. Because I believe that this is legitimately a nice place to live. And I know, yes, now we are going into the part where it just looks like Denmark. Like we're not. And now I feel like I want to make a way too long video that no one cares about. Once we have gone past that one, it's always kind of awkward to film with other people around. I don't necessarily like that at all. Well, to be fair, they have been to Germany, for sure. They have been out there. They've been down at the border. Well, I would like to talk about city collaboration, because we are right now in the town of Nordby on Fanø. And I just came from the city of Esbjerg, on the other side of the waters. I took the ferry to get over here. From Esbjerg, there's 12-minute ferry ride to Fanø, a 20-minute train ride to Varde, and a 30-minute train ride to Ribe, and a 10-minute train ride to Ribe, but we don't really talk about Ribe, because even though Ribe has about as many people as Ribe, Ribe feels like a much smaller city, town. Can't we just call everything a city? It smells like food here. It's so nice. It smells like a curry or something. Is that a thing? But I think it's very interesting that this city dynamic that is here, because I find it rather unique, because in Esbjerg there's 75,000 people. On Fanø, or in Nordby on Fanø, there's about 3,000. In Varde there's about 14,000. In Ribe there's 6,000, but again we don't talk about that. In Ribe there's 7,000. And I think especially Ribe, Esbjerg and Fanø have very much a thing or two in common. They have a kind of collaboration scheme. This isn't necessarily the most beautiful part. Parking lots are just never good, no matter what surroundings they're in. Well, to get back to the point, when I am going around in Esbjerg, I especially see many people from, of course, Esbjerg, but also many people from Fanø. Many people from which one should we take? We should take this one. I see many people from naturally Esbjerg and also Fanø, but also Ribe. I do not like that duck. Relax. Why is keeping a dog like that even allowed? I mean, I'm just passing by. I'm not going to do anything. With that being said, it seems like that Ribe and Fanø and Esbjerg have some kind of collaboration put in place. Why are there so many insects here? Are you serious? That's a problem with filming these videos outside. I always get distracted. And if I have to say so myself, quite understandably so. The interesting thing is that Ribe and Fanø is one of the very few, or is two of the very few places with housing prices that compete against the larger cities. Like, that house is not expensive compared to the stuff you find in Copenhagen or Aarhus or something, but you don't get houses thrown at you like you do in almost every other part of Denmark. Like, you can go to almost any part of Denmark, or almost any small town in Denmark, and you will basically get thrown houses at you. But it doesn't happen in Fanø and Ribe. And while that is, of course, that is good for the local economy and for the sense of community, I guess you could call it. It's a thing that I haven't seen like this in any other part of Denmark. Not necessarily that much in Varde, but Varde also has kind of something. Varde is a bit different because it's a municipality that is completely independent of the municipality of Esbjerg, yet relies heavily on pendlers from Esbjerg, like both Ribe and Fanø. And to say it again, houses here are cheap compared to in the big cities. But it's extremely expensive. Housing prices here match those of Esbjerg. Housing prices in Ribe match those of Esbjerg. I've not seen that any other place except Skagen, which is very different. And I really want to make a Skagen video at some point, if I get around to it. The thing is, when you live in Esbjerg, or when you live in especially Fanø and Ribe, you kind of feel connected to each other. Especially if you live on Fanø and in Ribe. Because if you look at cultural things, if you look at classical music, music or folk music especially. Ribe and especially Fanø plays a very, very big role in that. Which Esbjerg does not at all. But Esbjerg has the resources to help Fanø and Ribe make those things happen. Which is fantastic. I think Esbjerg gains a lot from Fanø and Ribe being around. Not necessarily economically, but culturally. And I ultimately think that the most prevalent people in the cultural aspect, and also in the educational and a lot of things, and the people who generally work in Esbjerg is the people from Fanø or from Ribe. Yeah, they also come from Bramming, but Bramming is just completely different because it's a station city. It doesn't have the cultural value. Don't get me wrong, it's a fine station city by all means. In fact, I think it's one of the best station cities. But it's a station city nonetheless. Which does mean that it has some disadvantages that comes with being a station city. Like a large portion of the pendlers from Esbjerg station, just from the railway station in Esbjerg, just pendle to and from Bramming. A lot of them also pendle to Ribe, but Ribe is still more independent. It isn't a pendler city. It's a town with a lot of people that work in Esbjerg. And I think the collaboration between especially Esbjerg, Fanø and Ribe, but also Varde. The people who live in Varde is not as cultural as the people who live in on Fanø and in Ribe. And that kind of makes sense because Ribe is the cultural epicenter of the old Denmark. And Fanø is the folk center of Denmark. There isn't a place where you get a more significant folk culture in Denmark than on Fanø. And there isn't any place so out in the countryside as Ribe where you get that level of cultural and historical significance. Whereas Esbjerg itself is often described as lacking in culture. Which makes sense, because Esbjerg is a planned city. It is a station city that grew big. I would say Esbjerg is the biggest example of a station city. What are they doing right there? Are they going in there? Just look at how awful they are driving. I mean, that's part of the problem, you know. And I think in the last couple of days and in the last year or so, I've really kind of felt the alliances, could you almost call it, but not quite, between Esbjerg, Fanø and Ribe, and Esbjerg, Sønderborg and Odense and Kolding in the region of southern Denmark. Because there isn't, well, yes, there is a clear big city in southern Denmark, but it's almost like Odense recognizes on a whole nother level than Aarhus or Aalborg up north, that they have a big region. They have the country's, they have Denmark's biggest region. that include the significance that is the entirety of Sønderland and the southern Jutland with the triangle area, the western area that is Esbjerg, Ribe, Fanø and Varde, and it has the entirety of Fanø as well, which has its own interesting population dynamics. But that way, not only is there some kind of alliance, which is a very stupid name by the way, between Esbjerg and Fanø and Ribe, and also in some part Varde. I'm not too into Varde, because the Varde people is more business or handcraft oriented, whereas, why are they stopping there? Whereas Ribe and Fanø is more cultural, and it's where the, dare I say, smart people live. And it seems like I was to a Saturday school, they call it, for piano players a couple of days ago, and there were people from all over southern Jutland, and they also have some similar things in Odense and in Sønderborg. And we had people from I think it was Give, not too far from Vejle, and from Sønderborg, and from Esbjerg and Fanø, and also from Odense. Was from Odense that had come all the way from Odense or Sønderborg to Esbjerg to actually learn something like that. And I think that says something about the region. If we took to the region of central Jutland or northern Jutland, everything would be in Aarhus, or everything would be in Aalborg. Whereas there are much less difference between the big cities in southern Denmark, which doesn't allow Odense to be up in themselves in the same way that the people in Aarhus and the people in Aalborg is. Like, when you say with the big cities in central Jutland, you say Aarhus, you say Horsens, you say Silkeborg, maybe Herning, and you say Randers. And all these cities are Aarhus oriented. They aren't independent the same way that Sønderborg is independent, that Esbjerg is independent, that Kolding and Vejle and Fredericia in the triangle area is kind of independent. There isn't a clear winner in the region of southern Denmark. Which means, I think, that when you get out in the countryside in southern Denmark, it isn't completely forgotten about as quickly as it is in central Jutland or in northern Jutland, or even in Sjælland, actually. No, I shouldn't say anything about Sjælland. I don't know anything about Sjælland. But I support city collaboration. I doesn't support pendling for the sake of pendling. That's where I stand. Bye.